Hi, my name is John Prescott, and I am going to talk to you about video. And of course, hopefully you watched the photography segment of the video presentation I've already done. And right now I want to talk about video. So, of course, there were a lot of things that we talked about, and you might even be asking yourself in all of this, why does any and all of this matter? Well, the simple reason is that everything that we talked about in the photography section of the tutorial, it translates right into video. And the reason why is because digital video cameras look at light in the same exact way. It's always about light. So again, this is for Lifehouse Church. So if for example, you're shooting Richard up on stage and the screens behind him, they might look white, or they're too bright, but to your visual eye, they might have a color. What is going on? And again, we had this happen a while back where basically the luminosity or the brightness of the screen behind Richard here was so bright that this little bit of green ended up turning into white on the other camera. So, what is actually happening is that there's overexposure. And of course, how do we combat this? Well, there's two ways to combat that. We bring the exposure down so that we can capture, the color information. Or the other thing, and this was the solution that we used the following week, is that we brought the brightness or luminosity of the screens behind them down, and so that we had balance at that point. So that's how we compensated that. Now, hopefully, if you're shooting for Lifehouse, we've got everything dialed in, and you don't even have to worry about that. But it's just something to keep in mind with video cameras. And a lot of times, video cameras are more sensitive to this than a photo camera. So, how many times have I heard this? Hey, I'll just fix it in post, right? Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. And again, if you saw the photography part of that, it works the same with video, even more so, where basically if you don't get your exposure right, yeah, you're hosed, you're done. That's it. So, yeah, wrong. Don't say that. Get it right in the camera first. It will always be your best image. And of course, anything we do in post is really supposed to enhance the image and not fix something. So, and this is especially true with the cameras that we are using right here. We've got examples of three awesome cameras here. The Arri Amira, or Alexa is another version or flavor of Arri. Red Weapon or Scarlet, and then of course a Sony, I think that's an F65 right there. Great high-end cameras. I mean, you're looking at cameras right there between $50,000 and $100,000 easily, and that's just for the camera. That is not for the body. When you start shooting with these smaller, less expensive cameras, it just doesn't capture the information that's coming through on the sensor. And yeah, that's, budgets and money. Yeah, they fix a lot of things, but of course, better shooting fixes more things. So, yeah, just shoot with the proper exposure. And if you don't know how to expose properly, yeah, again, well, watch the photo part of this. So let's talk more about composition. What makes a good video? Great question. And this is something called a suspension of disbelief. Suspension of disbelief is incredibly important, especially in this day and age. Movie makers, television programs, look, they've all been pushing the realm into what they call this suspension of disbelief. So a good example of this is, what is your favorite movie? What is your your favorite TV show? Why do you like it so much? Is it, if you've gotten into any movie here where you've sat back and time seems to pass by, that's a great example of a suspension of reality, suspension of disbelief, where you just are immersed into the viewing experience. And of course, there's many ways that we go about doing this. So let me show you an example of this suspension of reality. Now, this is just a quick snippet from the movie 2012, where we've got an earthquake happening, and there's going to be lots of things that actually happen in the scene. So let's start this right here. So obviously, we're cutting to a lot of different shots. Tight shots, wide shots. We've got a lot of action going on here. I wish I could have the audio with this too, because it really enhances the situation. We've got camera jerking and moving. A lot of special effects, a lot of things happening. Again, this is all computer generated. None of this is shot real except those shots. Computer generated. I don't even think the car is real on this. That's a real shot there. Computer. Yeah. Great scene with everything that's going on here. So let's move on. Let's move on to another segment here. I love the old ladies. Let's move on to another segment from a movie called Logan's Run. Now, this movie here, I don't want to start it just yet, but this movie actually won an Oscar back in 1976, I think it was, somewhere around that era. And it was for visual effects. And it really was cutting edge at the time. So take a look at this set here. So we've got two people, they're going to obviously take a taxi or whatever this thing is, and they're going across the city. So let's go to this next scene right here. Look at this. Obviously it's a miniature, and the camera is trying to follow this thing. I'm waiting to see a hamster or a gerbil or whatever go running down the tube after them or something. So yeah, that's that scene. And of course, back then you could get away with this. But as movie makers have, gotten better and better at what they do, it's harder and harder to fool the audience. Very, very important here. So look, let's just read this. Consider this. Aside from digital cameras now pushing into and surpassing resolution of film, this is so important. In the last 10 years, only the last 10 years really, there actually has been more innovation, with many more companies sprouting up that develop and manufacture machines and devices to put camera in places never thought possible, with a lot of them developed to steady the shot. And there is a reason for this, and it all has to do with that suspension of reality. So let's talk about some of the devices used, and this may or may not be important to you, but a Steadicam. This is one of the first devices that was made back in the, I think it was early 80s they actually developed this. And it's a series of counterbalances and springs that help steady the camera. Very important, because you don't want to get a handheld shot. You just want the camera to glide through like you're just kind of gliding through a corridor. That's how they get these shots. So a new evolution of this, and this just came out, I'd say, really in the last 5 years at best. You've got a FreeFly Mobi or a DJI Ronin. These are two just different brands, but they use a series of motors to tilt and give tilt and yaw to the camera to keep the angle of shooting exactly the same no matter where the operator is running. So this is another way of doing this. So a jib arm. This is an older school method of putting a camera on something that basically increases the altitude of the image, and there's other ways to control and manipulate the camera at the end of an arm. And just, again, it's another way of creating just a different kind of floating shot. Obviously, it's going to have limitations of how long the arm is and how far up and down you can go. So just, again, it's another way of getting a more interesting shot. And of course, here is a good example of kind of an extreme of a jib arm that is mounted to the top of a car. And, you get these unbelievably smooth and steady shots that you never could have before. Really just pushing, pushing movie making. Absolutely amazing to me. So here is another thing, and you'll see this more at sporting events. I think this is such an innovative thing where it's called a spider cam, where you've got basically cables. Let's see, we've got you can only see 3 of the 4 cables here, but you've got 1, 2, 3 cables, and then the 4th one would go out this way. And then on the top here, you've got a gyro stabilization, and what that does is no matter where you move the camera, left, right, up, center, down, forward, whatever it is, it just keeps the camera upright. So again, this is just an interesting way of getting a new angle, a new perspective. Of course, drones. My gosh, it seems like everybody's got a drone. Drones are awesome. Amazon delivering to a helipad in your backyard. But again, cameras mounted on drones. This is new technology that's come out again in the last 5 to 10 years, all in the interest of getting new and interesting shots that has never been seen before. So let's see. Let me give you an example here again of this is a drone image I took over at Brighton Beach. So of course here we are going where we're just kind of increasing the altitude, and bloop, we just kind of leapt off to the right hand side. Again, I want to play this again. I can't remember if I show this later on, but again, great shot, and you'll see you're kind of immersed in it. As soon as I pan to the right, you lose it. Boom. You know that it's a camera on a drone. You just kind of lost that suspension of reality. So why does this matter for a church or when shooting for a church? Great question. And it's because every bobble, every camera jerk, every bump, every wiggle, anything that creates an unnatural movement is picked up by all viewers that can potentially take them out of the moment. And especially for viewers who are watching a church podcast or a church sermon. Look, if people are listening to the sermon, they want to be immersed in the moment. They want to be immersed into what they're hearing, and it's so subtle with every single bobble, but it's subtle enough that a viewer is going to stop paying attention so much to the sermon, and they're going to kind of pay attention to that bobble, and it just takes away from that moment. So that's how important this is. So again, here is a sermon that we took here with, this is a tight shot with Richard, where I cut to the other camera because I goofed on the camera. That's really what happened here is we had a bobble in the image. So that's what it looks. And then of course we fixed this in post because, with the jerkiness, you can actually do that. You cut to a second camera. Let's take a look at the actual bobble with no cut here. So obviously we've got a tight shot. I'll just be quiet and keep watching it. And there, a little left, a little up and down. This all happened because somebody walked behind me. And of course, here they're off to the shot. Yeah, little bobble. Now you're out of the moment. And that's why we cut to the other camera. So very, very critical. So fluid head is your friend. I say this because a fluid head is basically a device to help smooth your shot out. And of course, a fluid head has many adjustments on it. Everybody likes theirs differently. Not all fluid heads are the same as well. Some are better than others. And but yeah, again, it's just this is something that hopefully you can play with to get better at. And very important to just get very good and comfortable with your fluid head. So when talking about this, when you shoot with a wider angle, again, it's a shorter distance. You don't have to stay on top of the shot so much because whether they walk left and right, you just don't have to move the camera as much. Whereas if you are on this tighter shot, let's say, in the bottom right here, you know, every move left or right, you've got to stay on top. You got to anticipate where people are going. And that's all a very critical element to, you know, just making a good video shot here. So again, okay, one way of fixing this is I don't know if you saw this right in the left-hand side, you can lengthen or shorten your arm here. And of course, the longer it is, again, this is just a matter of levers and physics, the longer the arm is, again, the more you have to move left or right to follow the person at the other side, but yet you have more control over the shot and you'll end up being smoother. So with a wide shot, what we typically look for here, again, this is going with the general rule of thirds. General rule of thirds applies here with a wide shot. So typically what we want to have happen here is we want Richard to fall within these two pieces right here. You can see we're not following him. He's walking outside of this. You want your person to have a little bit of breathing room. They can walk around. We could stay right here, but see how they're off to the left-hand side. We gotta anticipate that. We have to move over that. They don't have to be center. I cannot emphasize that again. They don't have to be center. Problem is when you have them over, let's say on the left or right-hand side of where the rule of thirds line is, you've got to anticipate basically if they're going to go left or right. If they're here on the right-hand side and they're going to walk even further right, well, then you only have a third of the frame to move over to. So let's say they stop and you stop them on the third. What I typically would be doing is slowly moving it to where they're now center frame again, so that they have a little more breathing room to move left and right. And then you can anticipate them better. Anticipation is very important. So again, this is just a good example of not following the guides. Let's move to the next shot. This is following the guides. Here we go. Kind of following them center, and we stop. He's going to move a little off to the right. Kind of got him center here. Just a nice fluid movement, left, right. We can even let him breathe move a little bit more than even this, and I'd be comfortable with this. Other thing to keep in mind here, and this is also very critical for anybody who is on the wide angle shot. Look at how much space is above his head here. Look at how much space is below. In fact, what we've been moving to lately is that we are starting to allow a little more space on the bottom so we can see his feet. So you've got to adjust the zoom on the camera so that we get a little bit of space above the head, a little bit of space below the feet. Anything more than that where we have the people's heads in the audience, that's no good. Absolutely no good, and it's just not going to work. So very critical that you have everything framed right. So tight shots, same rule of thirds generally applies, but keeping the subject center framed is more desirable. And reason being is because, look, if you got somebody preaching who is all over the place, and we've had that happen, man, you just got to stay right on top of them, and it's a challenge. So look, smoothness, very important. In fact, I'll say this, if if they walk out of the shot, get right on them again. Just jam it right on over, get on them, steady yourself again. The editor will crop it out. Not crop it out, we'll go to the other camera, and we'll make it work somehow, but just get back on your subject and smooth everything out. So here's an example, again, rule of thirds. Again, Richard, for the most part here, is staying centered, but again, we're just nice and smooth with him. Kind of catching up to him right here. It's all good. Back to center. Great. Okay. And that is pretty much it for for the video tutorial. I'm happy to take questions on if you have any questions. I hope this video has helped. But look, we need more people on video and in photography. And look, if we can help you, if you just want to even learn more just for your own needs, I am an open book. I'm happy to help all you guys. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hope it helped. Take care.